Well, Jamila is on fire. Tonight, I want to talk about our representatives in the National Assembly. I want to congratulate them for gathering courage this morning to stand up to the executive. Without minding their political affiliation or even the all-too-familiar pro-handshake or anti-handshake divide, they almost paralyzed the special sitting convened to discuss a series of issues, among them the supplementary budget. They insisted no business would be conducted unless and until the government assured them of the pending allocation of resources to the National Government Constituency Development Fund. And they have a point, because their constituents, who are taxpayers, rely on those resources for development in the constituencies. That the National Treasury is yet to avail the funds 3 months to the end of the 2020-2021 financial year simply confirms the country's economy is on its knees. The lawmakers' conduct this morning reminded of a clever quote by Millard Drexler, that people like consistency. Whether it's a store or a restaurant, they want to come in and see what you are famous for. What the MPs did today is what they ought to have done every day, every week, every month, and every year, consistently, reminding the executive to do the right thing at the right time, in the right way. That perfectly captures their 3 responsibilities: representation, oversight, and legislation. Drafters of the 2010 Constitution envisaged a scenario where the 3 arms of government, that is the executive, Parliament, and judiciary, would perform their duties independently but interdependently. At no point was Parliament supposed to be an appendage of the executive, as we have witnessed particularly in the last 8 years of the Jubilee administration. But one wonders, where was the courage exhibited by members of Parliament today when the House in 2019 acted as a conveyor belt when the Jubilee administration pushed for an 8% VAT on petroleum products, resulting in the high fuel prices we are witnessing today. Imagine, for every litre of super petrol retailing at 122 shillings, the government pockets 57 shillings for a product whose landed cost is 48 shillings. I was actually dumbfounded when I saw some members of Parliament criticize the government over the fuel costs on Twitter, as if that is the new Parliament. One would ask, where was the courage shown by MPs today when for 6 years, as clearly stated by the former Auditor General, Edward Ouko, that at least a third of the annual budget cannot be accounted for? Forcing the government to account for those audit anomalies requires courage. And part of that courage, to quote Peggy Noonan, is simple consistency. In the last few weeks, we have been treated to cock and bull stories of how some people walked around KEMSA headquarters aimlessly and went home with tenders worth billions of shillings. The National Assembly must gather courage to end such jokes that are simply meant to take Kenyans for a ride. Next week, the National Assembly will be debating the Division of Revenue Bill 2021 that outlines how the 3 trillion shillings budget will be shared out between the 2 levels of government. But one detail in that bill caught my attention, that the National Treasury has projected revenue collection of 1.7 trillion shillings. But guess what? Up to 1.2 trillion shillings of this revenue will be used to service public debts. That means we'll be left only with 500 billion shillings to finance operations in the 2 levels of government. If you allocate 400 billion shillings to county governments in shareable revenue and conditional grants as proposed, it means that the national government will be left with only about 100 billion shillings. This simply means we'll have to borrow more. This is akin to digging a hole to fill another. I hope MPs will exhibit the same courage next week and ask the executive serious questions on the state of our country's economy and the value for money in those hefty local and foreign debts. I hope that the MPs will demand from the National Treasury a comprehensive scorecard on all projects, mega and small, their cost, status, and value for taxpayers' money. If they do not, then today's show of courage will simply mean they were cherry-picking because of NGCDF brings them direct benefit either financially or in terms of political clout, more so 16 months to the general election. I wish to remind them, that is the members of the National Assembly, and by extension their colleagues in the Senate, what Maya Angelou said, that courage is the most important of all the virtues, because without courage, you cannot practice any other virtue consistently. So, have yourselves a courageous and consistent weekend and week. See you on Thursday.